What's going on, everybody? It's me, Tim, and we just got our CPI news, so let's check it out. And I'll leave this down below for you so you can look into it in more detail, but what our numbers are is we got a year of 5%, where economists were expecting a 5.2, so that came in cooler than expected. And month to month, we saw a 0.1% increase, whereas economists were expecting a 0.2. And you'll notice here on the right-hand side that some of these categories are down pretty massively looking at year-over-year numbers. We do have transportation up in the double digits, as well as electricity, but the things that are down are quite a bit down. We have an 11% drop in the used vehicle market, a 17% drop in energy commodities, a 17% drop in gasoline, and this goes into a lot more detail, so make sure you check it out. But one thing that I think we're going to see moving forwards is, being that when you look 1 year ago, this is when inflation was really kind of out of control and the Fed was starting to raise rates. It was realized that inflation was in fact not transitory. You know, we're going to have these high numbers to compare against, and I really do see inflation continuing down. And one thing to think about is the Fed doesn't have to pivot at 2% inflation. The Fed will likely pivot much sooner. We could be in the low 4s, maybe in the upper 3s by the time the Fed decides to start lowering rates. I do personally believe that rates are high enough that we are going to continue to see inflation coming down more and more as time ticks on. And at this point, it's really up in the air whether we actually get one more rate hike or not. I do think personally that they're at least going to sustain these rates until inflation comes down a little bit more, until we see maybe the 3s or 4s, and then the Fed can potentially start cutting. And even with them cutting, these current rates are still so high compared to what we're all used to in the economy that I personally think even with a couple of rate cuts by the end of the year, inflation will continue coming down. But let me know what you guys think. What do you think about CPI that came out? I also quickly wanted to show you the market and what's going on there. You'll notice that we do have a majority of green. We do have a couple larger names that are flat, like Tesla, Nvidia, and Amazon. But overall, I would say it is a pretty good day in the market. And in the crypto world, looking at Bitcoin, we're still hovering right in the $30,000 area. We did pull back briefly last night, touched the 29s, and I personally wouldn't be surprised to see that again. And I think it's very likely we see a retest right around 28.7 area to see if we bounce off of this point, which was a previous resistance. We may flip as a support, and it's also conveniently placed right around this support line on this sort of a wedge pattern that we're seeing. I'm still watching this closely. I think this wedge pattern may turn out to be a break to the downside, and we may test our 50 MA right around the 26,000 area by the time we reach it. But despite this short-term negative pattern on the chart, it could of course disregard it, so there's that. But you know, despite all that, I do believe that now is still a great time to get into Bitcoin. And while yes, you know, you're looking at it from the bottom of 15,000 already as a double up, but despite that, any pullbacks I see as a great opportunity as we approach the halving and as we approach a better, more euphoric market in the future. Let's face it, this is still clearly a very pessimistic market, and I personally believe we're in somewhat of a disbelief phase. People don't believe the bull market has started yet, and I think it personally has. And quickly looking at CleanSpark, we're getting a nice move there as well, another 9% day, whereas yesterday we saw somewhere around a 14% day. This is definitely looking good, and we did just breach our 200 MA that I mentioned in the last video. Now, one new zone I'm looking out for is right around this 370 area. Breaking these levels would indicate that we're seeing higher highs and also looking at higher lows. And if we do continue in this upward momentum, we will see our golden cross. It is actually very close. It is approaching. And one thing that you'll notice as well is we have a lot more volume than we're used to seeing, and that's a very good sign as well as we continue to push higher. But let me know how you guys are feeling about CPI. Do you think that it's going to continue coming lower and lower and we may see the Fed pivot by the end of the year? Do you think we're due for a couple more rate hikes? And also, what do you think about Bitcoin? Are we going to blow right past the 30s? Is it going to be a bit of a struggle until we get to 40? Or do you expect a retracement back into the 20s or even lower, or even seeing new lows? Let me know down below what you think. Thanks as always, guys, and I'll see you next time.